Hey everyone, and welcome to this explainer. Today, we're diving into something absolutely fascinating, ecocriticism. Basically, it's a completely different lens for reading literature, one that puts the environment right center stage. We're going to jump straight into how this movement evolved through three distinct waves, and then we'll break down a taxonomy of key terms you really need to know. So let's look at the timeline. The whole movement essentially rolled out in three major eras. We've got the first wave kicking off in the 1990s, the second wave moving into the 2000s, and then the third wave taking over from the late 2000s and into the 2010s. Let's break down exactly what each of these phases actually focused on. All right, starting with the first wave in the 1990s. Now back then, the focus was entirely on saving pure, untouched wilderness. Think of it as keeping the human world and the natural world completely walled off from each other. To put that into perspective, imagine reading a really old romantic poem. The poem spends all its time describing this beautiful, completely empty mountain, and the whole point is just to protect that mountain from any human contact. That's classic first-wave thinking. But then, things shift. We move into the second wave in the 2000s. Remember how that first wave kind of pretended human society didn't exist? Well, critics realized that was a huge blind spot because it totally ignored human struggles. So, the second wave pivots to look directly at cities, society, and human problems.
It really zeroes in on how pollution disproportionately hurts lower-income communities. Imagine reading a story about a poor, marginalized neighborhood fighting back against a massive, dirty factory that's literally making the residents sick. That's the core of the second wave.
And that brings us to the third wave. Here, we zoom way out. This wave looks at the entire globe, not just one specific local issue. The focus shifts to massive global emergencies that affect literally every single country on Earth, things like global warming and widespread climate shifts. Think about it like this. Imagine a plastic water bottle. Somebody in a huge city, thousands of miles away, casually tosses it into the ocean. The ocean currents grab it, carry that piece of trash all the way across the globe, and it eventually washes up and ruins a pristine beach right here in Indonesia. It perfectly captures how pollution knows absolutely no borders. Okay, moving right along to Section 2, a taxonomy of key terms. We're going to run through some essential concepts you'll come across in this field. First up is ecopoetics. As you can probably guess, it's a mashup of ecology and poetry. It basically uses the natural world as a framework to explain how a poem actually functions.
It's kind of a beautiful concept, really. Just like water naturally flows through a landscape, nourishing it, the message of an eco-poem flows into our society, deeply touching and shaping human minds.
Next, we have ecocentric value. This is the core belief that protecting the Earth isn't just a nice idea, it's literally our absolute #1 duty. It's the philosophy that we absolutely must put nature first.
To picture this in a story, imagine a character who is offered a massive, life-changing amount of money to sell out, but they completely refuse the cash just to keep a local forest safe from developers. That is ecocentric value in action.
Closely tied to that is deep ecology. Now, this concept pushes back hard against the idea that nature is just a giant warehouse of resources for humans to use. Deep ecology argues that nature is incredibly important all by itself, completely independent of us. So, a tree isn't just valuable because we can chop it down and build a house with it. A tree is inherently valuable simply because it is alive and growing, period. Now let's talk about ecofeminism. This is a crucial concept that highlights the deeply rooted connection between the unfair treatment of women and the destruction of the natural world. It looks at how both are exploited by the exact same power structures. For instance, imagine a narrative where greedy, powerful men are exploiting the women in a local town, while at the exact same time they're clear-cutting and destroying the surrounding forest. Ecofeminism connects those two injustices directly. Then, there's toxic consciousness. This is basically the big wake-up call. It's that pivotal moment in a story when characters suddenly open their eyes and realize, usually with a lot of horror, that the world they're living in is sick, polluted, and dangerous. We also have to talk about environmental justice. This concept tackles fairness in our living conditions head-on, and it asks a really tough, provocative question. Why is it that wealthy neighborhoods always seem to get the clean air, while poor neighborhoods are forced to live right next door to dirty, toxic factories?
Obviously, that is not a fair system. Environmental justice is the ongoing fight to ensure that every single person, regardless of their background, gets the exact same right to live in a clean and safe environment.
All right, for our final two terms, we're pitting two completely opposing worldviews directly against each other. The ecosphere versus anthropocentrism.
Let's start with the ecosphere. This term represents the massive, interconnected web of all living organisms. You know, the humans, the animals, the trees, and their physical environment, like the dirt, the rocks, and the water. It recognizes that physical places actively shape who people are, while at the same time, the actions of those people are constantly changing the physical place. It's a complete two-way street.
On the complete opposite side of the spectrum, you have anthropocentrism. And this is essentially the rather selfish belief that human beings are the single most important things in the entire universe. It's the extremely flawed idea that the Earth and everything on it only exists for us to use.
So, as we wrap up this explainer and look to the future, it really leaves us with a massive question to ponder. Will we ultimately embrace our deep connection to the ecosphere, or are we going to remain trapped by the selfishness of anthropocentrism? Thanks so much for joining me today, and I really hope this sparked your curiosity to dive even deeper into the world of eco-criticism.